Well, hello guys, this is the first video we're going to do on I'm starting on the anatomy and physiology of animals and humans. So let's get started right away. I'm going to start with the animal tissues, and in this video we're going to examine the connective and the epithelial tissue, although there are muscular and nervous tissue as well. After this video, we are going to talk about the digestive system. And as we go through the systems, we will go to the muscular system, and this is where we're going to talk about the muscular tissues, and we're going to look at the nervous system, synapses, and all that kind of stuff, and this is where we're going to talk about the nervous tissue. Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about epithelial and connective tissue. First of all, what is a tissue? It is an assemblage of similarly specialized cells united in performing a specific function. And a tissue is made up of two things: cells, so it is an assemblage of cells, and ECM, extracellular matrix. Extra means out of. Okay, out of the cell, and it's the fluid around the cells. Alright, what is an organ? An organ has many tissues, and an organ is made up of two things: the parenchyma and the stroma. The parenchyma are the cells of the organ that perform the organ's specialized functions, while the stroma are the cells of which have a supporting role in the organ. It is always connective tissue, except in the central nervous system. What organs does the central nervous system contain? The brain and the spinal cord. So let's start with the epithelial tissue. It forms the epidermis and of the integument, the skin and the accessory structures such as sweat glands, oil glands, nails, and hair follicles. And it is a continuous covering of the outside of the body, and the endothelium. It forms the endothelium, a continuous line of the internal surfaces of the blood vessels. So you can see that its main function is to cover, line, and protect surfaces. But it does not have only this function, it has more functions. Sometimes it absorbs, like in the intestinal lining. As food passes through your intestines, the epithelial tissue absorbs the nutrients and also secretes. The epithelial tissue makes up the parenchymal cells of glands. So it's the main tissue responsible for the secretion of substances. Epithelial cells usually show polarity. We have talked about polarity again in the cell videos. But let me remind you, it means that cells have an orientation inside them. They have two ends, two poles as they're called, and each pole has a different distribution of organelles, and membrane proteins are distributed unevenly within the cell according to the pole. So we say that the epithelial cells have two poles: the basal pole and the apical pole. The basal pole is the region of the cell which contacts the ECM, the extracellular matrix, and the connective tissue, where the cells step on. We will see pictures later. The apical pole is facing a space, the lamen of the organ they line. Now, if this is a blood vessel, this space here is called the lamen. If this is the small intestine, the space here is called the lamen. Okay, so when you see the term lamen, don't ask what it is, or don't start looking in the dictionaries. And that it is this hollow space inside a tube, let's say. Okay, now the basement membrane. What is that? The basal surface of all epithelia rests on a thin extracellular thread-like sheet of macromolecules. What on earth? Let me show you. You see, this is the epithelial tissue. These are the epithelial cells. You see that purple thing, this is the basement membrane. It contains the basal lamina, or more superficial, and more deep, it contains the reticular lamina. And it is a semi-permeable filter for substances reaching epithelial cells from below, from the basal pole. And this is the apical pole, which faces the lamen of the organ. So let's say we have this type of tissue, or this one, simple squamous, let's say epithelium. That would be the blood vessel. This is their apical surface that faces the lamen, and this is their basal pole that faces the basement membrane, and it's in direct touch with the basal lamina. And we've got 10 types of epithelial tissue. And you're going to ask, what on earth? I only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Where are the rest 3? We're going to get right into it. Where are the rest 3? And now let's start talking one per one. First of all, we've got the simple squamous epithelium. This tissue, it is a single layer of flat cells and functions in rapid diffusion and filtration. Then we've got the simple cuboidal epithelium. This tissue, which is a single layer of cuboidal cells, functions in absorption and secretion, and it is typically found in glands. Then we've got the simple columnar epithelium. This tissue is made of a single layer of cells that are elongated in one dimension, like a column, and usually densely packed. Like simple cuboidal epithelium, this tissue functions in secretion and absorption. Sometimes these cells, they have these cilia. No, actually this is the microvilli. No, they got little hair-like, we've talked about the cilia in the past, and it's like hair-like extensions. It's hair-like structures that act to move substances along waves. If a simple columnar epithelium has cilia, it is a different type of a different kind of epithelial tissue, and it's called simple columnar ciliated epithelium. So we've got simple columnar epithelium with no cilia and simple columnar ciliated epithelium. That's another that is not shown here. Then we've got the pseudostratified columnar epithelium. As you can see here, this tissue is made from a single layer of columnar cells. The prefix pseudo means false, and why it is called like that? This tissue appears stratified or layered. You see that? Because the cells nuclei don't line up in a row as they do in simple columnar epithelium. Also, this happens because it is not always sometimes it is being seen as stratified, but sometimes it's seen as simple. You know when that happens? That happens in the gallbladder, because this is densely packed and it seems like, you see, what? Stratified in layers. But when the bladder is full of urine, so these types of tissue is stretched, we can see very clearly that it is a simple columnar epithelium. But because we cannot always distinct that, because sometimes it looks like it is stratified, but it is not stratified, we call it pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Then we've got stratified squamous epithelium, and this tissue consists of also we've got pseudostratified columnar ciliated epithelium, with these cells are the same as the pseudocolumnar epithelium, but they also feature cilia. Then we've got the stratified squamous epithelium. This tissue consists of several layers of cells, squamous epithelial cells, on the outside, with deeper layers of cuboidal or columnar epithelial cells. Okay, it's found in areas where the outer layer is subject to wear and needs to be replaced continuously. Then we've got the stratified cuboidal epithelium. This tissue is made of several layers of cuboidal cells that mainly act as protection. And then we've got the stratified columnar epithelium, it is a multi-layered absorptive and secretive tissue, and we also have the transitional epithelium, which the cells of this tissue can change or transition, this is why it is called transitional, from dome-shaped or scallop-shaped to squamous, flat, and back again, as needed by the tissue. So it's transitional between all that types of stuff. Maybe it's be traditional stratified or transitional simple squamous and simple. And then we've got from squamous to cuboidal and maybe to columnar. It's transitional between these things. Okay. Now I want to talk about intracellular adhesion and other junctions. The only reason why I'm talking about this because we have talked and I have introduced you to this idea when we're talking about the cell and we're talking about cell communication and how cells are kept together. So we mentioned several types of junctions inside the cells, and we've got three types: tight or occluding junctions, which form a seal between adjacent cells. Then we've got adherent or anchoring junctions, which are sites of strong cell adhesion. And we've got gap junctions, which are channels for communication between adjacent cells. Let's look at this picture. We've got a tight junction. It keeps them together. Adherent junctions. Desmosome. Desmosome is an adherent or anchoring junction. We've got gap junctions. You see what are these? Tubes, like channels, which allow cell-to-cell communication. Okay, and we've got another anchoring junction here in the basal lamina, in which the epithelial cells step into. And then there are microvilli. You see, these are cytoplasmic projections. Be careful. The cilia are extensions in the apical surface, but are hair-like. They're outside of the cell membrane. So if I had my cilia here, it would be like that. These are cilia. These are hair, literally, like hair. Okay, but the microvilli are cytoplasmic projection. That means the cytoplasm takes that shape. Okay, in the apical cell surface. Now, before I want to remind you about desmosomes, that they are a firm cellular adhesion and strength throughout the epithelium. And oh yes, the microvilli we were talking about. They occur in cells such as those lining the small intestine, and densely packed microvilli are visible as a brass or striated border projecting to the lamen. And then we've got connective tissue. Connective tissues connect, support, and bind body structures together. Generally, a connective tissue is made of cells that are spaced far apart within gel-like semi-solid or fluid matrix. This is why the major constituent of connective tissue is the extracellular matrix. Okay, the matrix, what it is? It is a material that surrounds and supports cells. If you want to imagine that, imagine a chocolate chip cookie, and the duff is the matrix for the chocolate chips. Okay. Now, connective tissue has many functions and thus many forms. But before we talk about the forms, I want to talk about the cells that we find in the connective tissue. First of all, we've got fibroblasts, which are like the protagonists, we could say, of connective tissue. They originate locally from mesenchymal cells and are primary residents of connective tissue. And you will ask right now, mesenchymal cells, what is this? When we make an introduction to embryology, you see mesenchymal cells is some cells during the embryonic development. Okay, anyway, let's moving on. We also have macrophages, plasma cells, and mast cells. They originate from hematopoietic stem cells in bone marrow. You see, this is a Greek word, hematopoietic, maybe, I don't know. These words come from the Greek word pio, which means make, and hemato comes from from the Greek word ema, which means blood. And these are stem cells, in bone marrow that make blood. This is why they're called hematopoietic. They circulate in the blood, so they originate from these cells in the bone marrow. This is where they create, and then they pass and circulate in the blood. And then they move into connective tissue where they function. They're transient cells of most connective tissues. That means they perform various functions for a short period as needed and then die by apoptosis. Let's see about fibroblasts. It's the most common cell in connective tissue proper, or as it's called, areolar tissue. We'll look at it a little bit later. And they produce and maintain most of the tissue's extracellular components. They synthesize and secrete collagen and elastin. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. It's almost everywhere. And it is made by the fibroblasts. It is synthesized by the fibroblasts. And they also create elastin, which together, or both of them, sometimes only collagen, sometimes elastin, sometimes together, they form large fibers. Then we've got adipocytes and other sets of cells. They are called fat cells, and these large, again mesenchymally derived cells are specialized for cytoplasmic storage of lipid as neutral fats, or less commonly for the production of heat. So they're fat cells. They store fat. Tissues with a large population of adipocytes, called adipose connective tissue, it serves to cushion and insulate the skin and other organs. Adipocytes have major metabolic significance with considerable medical importance. That's why I believe you should know that. Then we've got macrophages. They got phagocytic ability. That means they do what? Phagocytosis. We've talked about it. It's cell eating. Okay. They specialize in turnover of protein fibers and removal of dead cells, tissue debris, or other particulate material, being especially abundant at sites of inflammation. They're often referred to by pathologists as histiocytes, and they're long-living cells and may survive tissues for months. Now, I believe you should know that. Macrophages derive from bone marrow precursor cells called monocytes. So, we've got monocytes, and sometimes they specialize and become macrophages. Okay, these cells cross the epithelial wall of small venules to enter connective tissue, where they differentiate, mature, and acquire the morphologic features of phagocytic cells. So, monocytes and macrophages are the same cell at different stages of maturation. Macrophages play a very important role in the early stages of repair and inflammation. Oh God. After tissue damage. Let me write that down to correct it. After tissue damage. Under such conditions, these cells accumulate in connective tissue by local proliferation of macrophages and recruitment of more monocytes from the blood. Macrophages are distributed throughout the body and are normally present in the stroma of most organs. Along with other monocyte-derived cells, they comprise the family of cells called the mononuclear phagocyte team. All of these macrophage-like cells are derived from monocytes but have different names in various organs. For instance, in the liver, we call them Kupffer cells. In the central nervous system, microglial cells. In the skin, Langerhans cells. And osteoclasts in bones. Then we've got mast cells. They function in the localized release of many bioactive substances important in the local inflammatory response. Let me create that as well. Correct, I'm sorry. They are innate immunity and tissue repair. They are oval or irregularly shaped cells and occur in connective tissue of many organs. Mast cells are especially numerous near small blood vessels in skin and mesenteries, which are called their perivascular mast cells, and in the tissue that lines digestive and respiratory tracts, mucosal mast cells. These major locations suggest that mast cells place themselves strategically to function as sentinels detecting invasion by microorganisms. And then we've got plasma cells. They're lymphocyte derived and they're antibody producing, and their lifespan is about 10 to 20 days. We've got leukocytes that are wandering cells, and they're derived from circulating blood cells. And here I've put in this table as to help you study. Now we've got types of connective tissue, this table. We've got, first of all, the areolar tissue. This loose connective tissue surrounds and separates structures in every part of the body. Okay. Then we've got the dense irregular connective tissue. The protein fibers in this tissue are arranged in thick, tough, irregularly oriented bundles. We've got the dense regular connective tissue. The secretory cells of this type of connective tissue produce dense bands and sheets of parallel protein fibers, such as those in ligaments and tendons. You see embryonic mesenchyme. And then we've got adipose tissue, which is composed of fat cells. This loose connective tissue provides fuel storage as well as support and protection to its underlying structures. And we've got reticular tissue, reticular connective tissue. And these types of loose connective tissue again forms a web and functions as a filter in such organs as the spleen, the lymph nodes, and the bone marrow. And cartilage, bone, and blood is types of connective tissue. And this is all for today's video, guys. I hope you learned something, and I hope I help you with your studying. Anyways, if you like my videos, hit that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for your support, guys. Bye bye.